The knife caught the moonlight for half a second before it fell. Marcus stood in the doorway of the abandoned warehouse on Pier 17, his breath creating small clouds in the February cold. Through the broken window, he watched Elena, the woman who would become his wife in 3 weeks, press her lips against another man's mouth. But it wasn't just any man. It was Damien Cross, the ex-boyfriend she swore she'd never see again. The ex who'd put her in the hospital 2 years ago. Marcus's hand trembled as he pushed open the rusted door. The screech of metal on concrete made them turn. Elena's eyes went wide, mascara-streaked and guilty. Damien smiled, that predatory grin Marcus had only seen in photographs. "Marcus, wait," Elena started. But Marcus wasn't waiting anymore. He'd waited long enough. The engagement ring in his pocket suddenly felt like a stone. Everything he thought he knew shattered in that moment, scattered across the oil-stained floor like broken glass. Marcus Anthony Hayes was born on September 14, 1989, in Richmond, Virginia, to a postal worker father and a nurse mother who taught him that trust was the foundation of everything. At 35, he built his life on that principle, teaching high school literature, coaching the debate team, believing in second chances and the inherent goodness of people. His apartment on Monument Avenue was filled with books, vinyl records, and photographs of a life carefully constructed around stability and love. He'd met Elena Marie Cortez 3 years ago at a community fundraiser for domestic violence survivors. She was volunteering, he was donating books. Born on March 22, 1991, in San Antonio, Texas, Elena had moved to Richmond to escape her past. A past that included Damien Cross, a relationship that had left her with a fractured collarbone and a restraining order. She worked as a trauma counselor now, helping others escape the cycle she'd broken. Or so Marcus believed. Elena was beautiful in the way that made strangers turn their heads, dark hair that cascaded past her shoulders, eyes like amber catching light, a smile that could make you forget your own name. But it was her vulnerability that had drawn Marcus in. The way she flinched at sudden movements. The nightmares she'd wake from, crying into his chest. He'd promised her safety, consistency, a love that would never hurt. Their relationship had been a slow bloom. Marcus had patience. He'd held her hand for 3 months before their first kiss. He'd waited 6 months before she stayed the night. Every step forward was a victory against her trauma, a reclamation of trust. When he proposed last Christmas, beneath the lights at Maymont Park, she'd sobbed and said yes. But lately, something had shifted. Elena had become distant, distracted. She'd started taking calls in the other room. Working late at the counseling center. Coming home with the smell of cigarettes, though she'd quit 2 years ago. Marcus had noticed but said nothing, trapped between trust and suspicion, between love and the growing cold certainty that something was terribly wrong. Damien Cross was a ghost that haunted their relationship. Born on June 8, 1987, in Baltimore, Maryland, he was everything Marcus wasn't: dangerous, charismatic, unpredictable. A former Marine with PTSD he refused to treat, he'd met Elena at a bar in 2018. Their relationship had been volcanic, passionate and violent, a cycle of breakups and reconciliations that ended when he'd thrown her down a flight of stairs during an argument about his drinking. Marcus had seen the medical reports. He'd held Elena while she recounted the abuse in therapy. He'd been there when the restraining order was filed. Damien was supposed to be in their past, a cautionary tale about toxic love and survival. Yet here they were, in a warehouse at midnight, and Elena was in Damien's arms. Richmond in winter was a city of contradictions, historic monuments casting shadows over modern struggles, old money neighborhoods bordering forgotten industrial zones. The Warehouse district on Pier 17 was one such forgotten place, where shipping containers rusted beside the James River and the only visitors were homeless encampments and people seeking privacy for reasons that couldn't bear daylight. Marcus had grown up believing in fairness and justice. His father, Robert Hayes, had walked the same postal route for 30 years, knowing every family, every story. His mother, Diane, had worked night shifts at St. Mary's Hospital, coming home with stories of resilience and tragedy that shaped Marcus's worldview. They'd raised him to see the best in people, to offer grace before judgment. That worldview had been tested when he started teaching at Jefferson High. The students came from broken homes, gang territories, poverty that ground hope into dust. But Marcus persisted, believing that literature could offer escape, that education could break cycles. He'd won Teacher of the Year twice. Parents wrote him thank you letters. Former students visited to tell him he'd changed their lives. Elena's backstory was darker, painted in shades of survival. Her mother had died when she was 12, breast cancer that ravaged their savings and left her father, Miguel Cortez, a broken shell of a man. He'd remarried quickly, desperately, to a woman named Sharon who resented Elena's existence. The home became a battlefield. Elena learned early to make herself small, to read moods like weather patterns, to survive. She'd fled to University of Texas at 18, studying psychology, determined to understand the darkness she'd lived through. That's where she'd met her college boyfriend, Aaron, kind, stable, boring. They'd dated for 3 years before she realized she felt nothing, that safety had become a prison of its own. She'd broken his heart gently and moved to Richmond for graduate school. Damien had entered her life like a hurricane. They'd met at a bar called The Aftermath, a name that would prove prophetic. He'd been recently discharged from the Marines after 2 tours in Afghanistan. He had nightmares about Kandahar, about a roadside bomb that killed his best friend. He self-medicated with whiskey and rage. Their first 6 months were intoxicating. Damien was intense, passionate, overwhelming. He'd show up at her apartment at midnight with flowers. They'd drive to the Blue Ridge Mountains at dawn. He made her feel alive in a way Aaron never had, made her feel seen and wanted and necessary. But intensity has a dark side. The first time he grabbed her wrist too hard during an argument, he'd apologized profusely, cried, promised it would never happen again. The pattern established itself: explosion, apology, honeymoon phase, tension building. Classic cycle of abuse. The breaking point came on November 18, 2020. They'd been arguing about his drinking, about the job he'd lost, about the future that seemed to narrow with each passing day. He'd pushed her. She'd pushed back. He'd grabbed her by the throat and thrown her down the stairs of her apartment building. She'd woken up in the hospital with a fractured collarbone, 3 broken ribs, and a concussion. The restraining order was filed. Damien was arrested, spent 6 months in jail for aggravated assault, then vanished. Back to Baltimore, rumor said, or maybe further. Elena had started therapy, started rebuilding, started healing. That's when Marcus found her, or she found him, at that fundraiser where survivors shared their stories. Marcus became her reconstruction project, the proof that good men existed, that love didn't have to hurt. She'd been honest about her past, about the trauma, about the work she still needed to do. Marcus had accepted it all, patient as a saint, believing that love could heal anything. But trauma has its own logic, its own gravity. And Damien Cross, it seemed, had never really left. The signs had been accumulating like snow, individually insignificant, collectively suffocating. It started 3 months ago, in November. Elena had begun checking her phone compulsively, that particular anxious habit of someone expecting messages they don't want others to see. She'd place it face down on tables. Take it with her to the bathroom. Sleep with it under her pillow instead of charging it across the room like she used to. Marcus noticed but said nothing. Trust, he reminded himself. She'd earned his trust. Then came the schedule changes. Elena's counseling center had always had irregular hours, but now there were evening sessions that ran until 10, 11 at night. Weekend emergencies. A client in crisis who needed immediate attention. Marcus would call, and she'd answer in hushed tones, promising to explain later, then never quite explaining. In December, a week before Christmas, Marcus had borrowed her laptop when he crashed during lesson planning. He hadn't been snooping, or at least, he told himself he hadn't. But her email was open, and there it was, a message in the deleted folder, recovered by accident. No sender name, just a string of numbers. The message was brief, same place. Midnight. Don't tell him. Marcus's hands had trembled on the keyboard. Don't tell him. Him. Marcus. He'd considered confronting her, but fear held him back. Fear of what it might mean. Fear that his questions would push her away. Fear that he was being paranoid, that there was a reasonable explanation he couldn't see through his own insecurity. So he'd watched instead. Noticed the new perfume she wore sometimes, not the vanilla scent he'd bought her for her birthday, but something darker, muskier. Noticing the cigarettes, that telltale smell she tried to mask with mints and hand sanitizer. Noticed how she'd sometimes look at him with something like pity in her eyes, as if she were sorry for something she hadn't done yet. The week before their planned confrontation at the warehouse, Marcus had been grading essays late at school when his phone buzzed. A text from his friend Derek, a Richmond police officer. Hey man, weird question. Was Elena's ex's name Damien Cross? Just saw someone matching his old booking photo at the 7-Eleven on Broad Street. Thought the restraining order was still active. Marcus's blood had gone cold. He texted back, when? 20 minutes ago. Might not be him. Just thought you should know. Marcus had driven to the 7-Eleven. Reviewed the security footage with the night clerk, who remembered him from coaching the clerk's younger brother. They're on the grainy video. Damien Cross, older, harder, buying cigarettes and scanning the parking lot like a man expecting trouble. He was back. In Richmond. In their city. Marcus had gone home and found Elena asleep on the couch, her phone clutched in her hand. He'd gently removed it, and it had lit up with a notification, tomorrow night. You promised. The sender, a contact saved only as D. Marcus spent the next day teaching on autopilot, Shakespeare's sonnets about betrayal taking on new weight. His students noticed his distraction. Sarah Martinez, his star debater, asked if he was okay. He'd smiled and lied, the teacher's prerogative. After the final bell, he sat in his empty classroom, staring at lesson plans that suddenly seemed absurd. What was the point of teaching Romeo and Juliet to kids who'd grow up to have their hearts shattered? What was the point of believing in love when love could turn into this? Into surveillance and suspicion and the sick certainty that everything you built was constructed on sand? He'd driven home, prepared to confront Elena, to demand the truth. But she wasn't there. A note on the kitchen counter, client emergency. Home late. Love you. Love you. 2 words that had once meant everything, now just marks on paper. Marcus had made a decision then, one that felt both inevitable and impossible. He would follow her. He would see for himself. He would stop living in the prison of not knowing and step into the terrible freedom of truth. He'd waited in his car outside the counseling center, engine off, watching his breath fog the windows. Elena emerged at 8:30, looked around nervously, and got into her car. Marcus followed at a distance, every cop show he'd ever watched suddenly relevant. She drove east, toward the Warehouse district, toward the forgotten edge of the city. She parked near Pier 17, in the shadow of an abandoned grain silo. Marcus parked 3 blocks away and followed on foot, his heart hammering against his ribs. The February cold bit through his jacket. His breath came in short, sharp gasps that had nothing to do with exertion and everything to do with dread. Through the broken window of the warehouse, he'd seen them. Damien had arrived first, leather jacket and combat boots, looking like violence barely contained. Elena had run to him. Actually run, like in a movie, like someone greeting a lover after war. They'd talked. Marcus couldn't hear the words, but he read the body language, Damien's hands on Elena's face, Elena's hands on Damien's chest, not pushing away but pulling close. And then the kiss, brutal and hungry, nothing gentle about it. Marcus's vision had tunneled. His hands had clenched into fists. Every rational thought evaporated, burned away by the white-hot rage of betrayal. This wasn't just cheating. This was her choosing the man who'd nearly killed her over the man who'd loved her back to life. That's when he'd pushed open the door. "Marcus, wait, it's not what it looks like." The words hung in the cold air, absurd and expected. Marcus almost laughed. "Not what it looks like? What the fuck else could it look like, Elena?" Damien stepped forward, that predatory smile still fixed on his face. Up close, Marcus could see the changes. More tattoos, a scar above his left eye, a hardness in his expression that went beyond confidence into something darker. "Marcus, right? Elena's told me about you. The teacher. The nice guy." "Damien, shut up," Elena said, her voice sharp. She turned to Marcus, mascara running, hands trembling. "Please, let me explain." "Explain what?" "That you've been lying to me for months. That you've been seeing the man who put you in the hospital." Marcus's voice cracked. "That everything. Us, the engagement, the future we planned, was bullshit?" "It wasn't bullshit." Elena's eyes were desperate. "I love you, Marcus. I do. This," she gestured at Damien, "this is complicated." "Complicated." Marcus tasted the word, found it bitter. "That's your explanation? It's complicated?" Damien lit a cigarette, the flame briefly illuminating his face. "She never stopped loving me, Marcus. That's the truth you need to hear. You were the safe choice, the rebound, the guy who made her feel like she could have a normal life. But she doesn't want to be normal. She never did." "That's not true," Elena said, but her voice lacked conviction. Marcus looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the truth written in her posture, in the way she positioned herself between them, in the guilt that radiated from her like heat. "How long? Marcus. How long have you been seeing him?" Elena's shoulders sagged. 3 months. He reached out in November. Said he'd gotten help, gone to therapy, wanted to make amends. I told him no at first. But he kept reaching out, and I needed to see him. To make sure he was really better. To get closure. Closure. Marcus laughed, the sound harsh and broken. "Is that what you call fucking your abuser? Closure?" "We haven't," Elena started, then stopped. "It's not like that." "Then what is it like? Explain it to me, Elena. Make it make sense." Damien exhaled smoke, enjoying the show. "It's biology, Marcus. It's chemistry. It's the kind of connection you don't choose, it chooses you. Elena and we're bonded. Trauma does that. You create something together when you survive hell. You're a good man, Marcus, but you're boring. You're predictable. You're safe. And safety," he smiled, "is just another word for slow death." Marcus's hands clenched. "You broke her collarbone. You put her in the hospital. You're a fucking monster." "I was sick," Damien said, his tone shifting, becoming serious. "I had demons from the war, from watching my friends die. I wasn't myself. But I got help. Real help. 6 months in jail, then 2 years of intensive PTSD treatment. I'm not that man anymore." "And you believe him?" Marcus asked Elena. She hesitated. That hesitation was an answer. "Jesus Christ," Marcus whispered. "You really believe him?" "He's different now," Elena said quietly. "I can see it. The anger's gone. He's doing the work. And what about us? What about the work we did? The trust we built? The future we were supposed to have. Elena's eyes filled with tears. I never meant to hurt you. I thought I could figure it out. Though I could see him, get the closure I needed, and then move forward with you. But it got complicated. I started feeling things I thought I'd buried. And I didn't know how to tell you. So you just lied instead. I was protecting you. Protecting me. Marcus's voice rose. By sneaking around with your abusive ex. By planning to marry me while you were in love with someone else. That's not protection, Elena. That's cruelty. The word hung between them. Elena flinched as if struck. Marcus stood in that warehouse, surrounded by the detritus of forgotten commerce, rusted chains, broken pallets, shadows that seemed to hold their breath, and felt something fundamental shift inside him. All his life, he'd believed in redemption. In second chances. In the inherent goodness of people. He'd built his career on it, his relationships on it, his entire worldview on the principle that everyone deserved grace, that love could heal, that patience and understanding could overcome any obstacle. But standing there, watching the woman he loved defend the man who'd brutalized her, Marcus understood something he'd been avoiding: not everyone deserves redemption. Not every story has a happy ending. Some people are broken in ways that can't be fixed, and some choices forfeit the right to grace. The ancient Stoics taught acceptance, amor fati, they called it. Love your fate. Accept what you cannot control. But they also taught justice, taught that wisdom meant knowing when to let go, when to stop pouring yourself into vessels that could never hold water. Marcus had tried to save Elena. He loved her with everything he had. Had been patient, understanding, gentle. And she'd chosen violence anyway. Chosen the chaos she claimed to want to escape. That wasn't his failure. That was hers. The rage that had driven him to follow her, to confront her, began to cool. In its place came something harder, colder, a clarity born of grief. He looked at Elena and saw not the woman he'd planned to marry, but a stranger wearing her face. Someone capable of deception, of choosing pain over peace, of throwing away something real for the illusion of intensity. I'm done, Marcus said quietly. Elena's eyes widened. Marcus, please. I'm done believing you. Done fighting for us. Done being the safety net you jump off from to go back to him. He pulled the engagement ring from his pocket, held it up in the dim light. This was supposed to mean something. A promise. A future. He threw it. The ring bounced once on the concrete, the sound impossibly loud, then rolled into darkness. I deserve better than this, Marcus said, and the words felt like truth. I deserve someone who chooses me. Not someone who sees me as a consolation prize while they pine for their abuser. You don't understand, Elena said desperately. It's not that simple. It is that simple. You either choose me or you choose him. And you chose. Marcus turned toward the door. Enjoy your complicated life, Elena. I hope it's worth what you're giving up. Damien laughed, low and mocking. That's right, teacher. Run away. That's what you're good at, isn't it? Running from real emotion. Hiding in your books and your safe little life. Marcus stopped. Turned. You know what the difference between you and me is, Damien? I don't have to hurt people to feel powerful. I don't have to drag someone down to my level to feel worthy. You're not intense. You're not passionate. You're just broken, and too weak to do the work to fix yourself. So you find broken women who mistake your violence for strength. Damien's smile vanished. Careful, teacher. Or what? You'll hit me. Prove my point. Marcus shook his head. You're pathetic. And Elena, he looked at her one last time, you're throwing your life away on someone who will never love you as much as he loves his own pain. He walked toward the door. Marcus. Elena's voice cracked. He didn't stop. Marcus made it 10 steps before he heard the scream. Time slowed. He turned to see Damien gripping Elena's arm, his face contorted with rage. You're not going after him. You're staying here. With me. Let go. Elena tried to pull away. I gave up everything for you. 2 years in therapy, working through my shit, getting clean. You won't regret it now. Damien, you're hurting me. Like he hurt you. With his nice words and his understanding. That's poison, Elena. Slow poison. I'm the antidote. Marcus's body moved before his mind could catch up. Years of teaching high school, of breaking up fights in hallways, of coaching young men to channel their aggression into debate, all of it kicked in. Let her go. Damien turned, Elena still in his grip. This doesn't concern you anymore. You walked away, remember? I walked away from her. Not from watching a man assault a woman. Marcus moved closer, hands up, non-threatening. Just let her go, Damien. You don't want to do this. You don't know what I want. But his grip loosened slightly. Elena jerked free, stumbling back. Her arm bore red marks where Damien's fingers had been. I'm leaving. Both of you. I'm done with this. No. Damien's voice went flat, empty. That was worse than the rage. Marcus recognized that tone from his students right before they did something irreversible. You don't get to leave. Not again. Damien reached into his jacket. The knife emerged like a magic trick, suddenly there, catching the moonlight, an old K-bar combat knife with a 7-inch blade. Military issue. The kind that had seen war. Elena screamed. Marcus's heartbeat thundered in his ears. Every self-preservation instinct screamed at him to run, to get out, to let Elena deal with the consequences of her choices. But he couldn't. Despite everything, he couldn't. Put the knife down, Damien. Or what, teacher? You're going to debate me to death. Or you're going to prison for the rest of your life. Is that what you want? To throw away your second chance? Damien's hand trembled. You don't understand. She's mine. We're bonded. You can't just, his voice broke. I did the work. I got better. For her. Then prove it, Marcus said quietly. Prove you're better. Put down the knife. For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. The warehouse held its breath. Then Damien lunged, not at Marcus, but at Elena. Marcus moved on instinct, launching himself between them. He felt the impact, the shock of collision. They went down together, hitting concrete hard enough to knock the air from Marcus's lungs. The knife was between them, trapped by their bodies, pointing up. Marcus grabbed for Damien's wrist, trying to control the blade. Damien was stronger, military training, combat experience, the desperate strength of a man with nothing left to lose. They rolled. The knife scraped concrete, throwing sparks. Marcus's shoulder hit a pallet. Pain exploded up his arm. Damien was screaming, wordless rage, the facade of recovery shattered completely. Elena was screaming too, stop. Please stop. Marcus's fingers found Damien's throat. Squeezed. Not to kill, just to stop him, to end this. Damien bucked, twisted, and suddenly Marcus's grip slipped. The knife came free. Damien raised it, moonlight catching the blade, his face a mask of fury and grief. Marcus saw his death in that moment, saw the years he wouldn't have, the books he wouldn't read, the students he wouldn't teach. Then Elena crashed into Damien from the side, a linebacker's tackle that sent them both sprawling. The knife flew from Damien's hand, skittering across the floor. Marcus scrambled to his feet, gasping. Elena and Damien were tangled together, but she was on top now, her hands on his face. Stop. Damien, stop. Look at me. Look at me. Damien's eyes focused on her. The rage drained from his face, replaced by something worse, devastation. I'm sorry, Elena said, crying. I'm sorry I let you believe there was a chance. I'm sorry I couldn't let you go. But this, she gestured at the knife, at Marcus bleeding from a shallow cut on his arm he hadn't noticed, at the warehouse that smelled of rust and violence. This is what we are together. This is what we'll always be. And I can't do it anymore. Elena. I choose him. The words came out broken. I choose Marcus. I should have chosen him from the start. You and me, we're toxic. We bring out the worst in each other. We always have. Damien's face crumpled. You said you loved me. I do. I probably always will. But loving you is killing me, and I'm tired of dying. She stood up, stepped back. Get help. Real help. Not for me, for yourself. Because this, she touched the scars he'd left on her collarbone, this isn't love. Damien lay on the concrete, broken in a way no knife could accomplish. Marcus watched him curl into himself, sobbing, a warrior reduced to a child, all his defenses stripped away. Marcus moved to Elena, took her hand. We need to leave. Now. She nodded. They were almost to the door when Damien's voice stopped them. I'm sorry. Small words, enormous weight. For everything. You deserved better than what I gave you. Elena didn't turn around. Yeah. I did. They walked out into the February cold, sirens wailing in the distance. Someone had called the police. Marcus's arm throbbed. His whole body ached. But he was alive, and Elena was beside him, and the nightmare was ending. Or maybe it was just beginning. He honestly didn't know anymore. The police arrived 4 minutes later, Derek among them, his face grim as he took statements. Damien had violated his restraining order. Assault with a deadly weapon. Attempted murder, potentially. The charges piled up, each one another nail in the coffin of his second chance. They took him away in handcuffs. Damien didn't resist. Didn't speak. Just looked at Elena one last time before they put him in the cruiser, a look that held everything they'd been, everything they'd destroyed. At the hospital, a young doctor stitched Marcus's arm, 8 stitches, shallow cut, he'd been lucky. Elena sat beside him, silent, her hand in his. They'd answered questions from a detective who took notes with practiced efficiency. Self-defense. Protection of another person. Damien had the knife. Clear-cut case. But nothing about this felt clear-cut. In the parking lot, as dawn painted the sky gray, Elena finally spoke. I don't expect you to forgive me. Marcus looked at his bandaged arm. I don't know if I can. I know. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I was selfish. I thought I could have both. The safety you represented and the intensity he represented. I thought I could control it, keep them separate. I was wrong about everything. You chose him tonight. At the end, you chose me, but before that. I know. I made a choice every time I met with him. Every lie I told. Every secret I kept. She took a shaky breath. My therapist warned me. Said I was recreating trauma, seeking familiar pain because healing was harder. I didn't listen. Why not? Because healing meant letting go of who I thought I was. The girl who survived Damien, who was defined by that survival. Without that story, who was I? She looked at him, eyes red and swollen. I'm so sorry, Marcus. For betraying you. For taking your love and treating it like it didn't matter. You deserved so much better. Marcus sat with those words, feeling their truth. Yeah. I did. They sat in silence as the sun rose over Richmond, turning the James River gold. Somewhere in the city, students were waking up for school. Marcus should have been preparing his lesson on Hamlet, another story about betrayal and revenge and the poison of indecision. "I'm going back to Texas," Elena said quietly. "To my father. I need to figure out who I am when I'm not running from something or running towards something. Just me." Marcus nodded. "That's probably smart. The engagement. It's over. We both know that." More silence. "Then, did you love me? Really? Or was I just another broken thing you thought you could fix?" Marcus considered the question honestly. "Both, maybe. I loved who you could be. Who I thought you were becoming. But I was also playing savior, and that's not fair to either of us. Real love isn't about saving someone. It's about walking beside them while they save themselves." "That's very wise. I teach literature. Comes with the territory." Elena laughed, the sound watery and sad. "I'm going to miss you. I'm going to miss who I thought you were." They sat until the sun was fully up, until Marcus's phone buzzed with messages from Derek checking on him, from the school principal asking if he'd be in today, from his mother who'd somehow already heard about the incident. Elena kissed his cheek, a goodbye kiss, final and gentle. "Thank you for loving me, even though I didn't deserve it. Everyone deserves love, Elena. Not everyone deserves to be trusted with it." She nodded, understanding. Then she walked to her car, got in, and drove away. Marcus watched until she disappeared around the corner, taking with her the future they'd imagined and leaving him with the wreckage of the present. He went home. Showered. Changed his blood-stained shirt. Called the school to say he'd be taking a personal day. Then he sat in his apartment, surrounded by books and records and photographs of a life that suddenly felt like it belonged to someone else. His phone rang. "Derek. Hey man. You okay?" "Not really. Want company?" "Yeah. That'd be good." 2 months later, Marcus stood in his classroom after the final bell, organizing essays on Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby, another story about doomed love and the lies we tell ourselves. Sarah Martinez lingered by his desk. "Mr. Hayes. Can I ask you something personal?" Marcus looked up. "Depends on the question. Are you okay? You've been different since February." Quieter. He considered lying, giving the teacher an answer, the professional boundary. But Sarah was graduating in 2 months, heading to Georgetown on a full scholarship, largely because Marcus had pushed her, believed in her. She deserved honesty. "I got my heart broken pretty badly. Still working through it." Sarah nodded slowly. "Was it worth it? Falling in love, even though it ended?" "That's a complicated question. You always say complicated questions are the only ones worth asking." Marcus smiled despite himself. "I did say that, didn't I?" He thought about Elena. About the 3 years they'd had. About the ways she'd opened him up, taught him to be vulnerable, shown him that his nice guy routine was sometimes armor against real intimacy. About the joy they'd shared, the quiet Sunday mornings and loud Friday nights and all the small moments that had made him believe in forever. And he thought about the betrayal. The lies. The warehouse and the knife and the shattering realization that love wasn't always enough, that sometimes people chose their demons over their salvation. "Yeah," he said finally. "It was worth it. Not the ending, that sucked. But loving someone, really loving them, even if it ends badly, that changes you. Makes you bigger, somehow. More human. Even when it hurts this much. Especially then." The Stoics believe that the only thing we truly control is our response to what happens to us. I can't control that Elena lied to me, that she chose her ex, that our future evaporated. But I can control what I do with that pain. I can let it make me bitter and closed off, or I can let it teach me something about myself, about what I need, about what I'll accept and what I won't. What did it teach you? Marcus leaned back in his chair. That I deserve to be chosen. Not as a safety net or a backup plan, but as someone's first choice. That trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to rebuild. That love is necessary but not sufficient. You also need honesty, respect, shared values. He paused. And that I'm stronger than I thought. That I can walk away from something I desperately wanted because I knew it was destroying me. Sarah smiled. That's pretty wise for someone with a broken heart. Wisdom and heartbreak often arrive together. Ask any poet. After Sarah left, Marcus sat alone in his classroom, watching the late April sun paint the desks gold. He'd heard through Derek that Elena was still in Texas, working at a women's shelter, doing her own healing. That Damien had taken a plea deal, 5 years for assault with a deadly weapon, mandatory PTSD treatment, lifetime restraining order. The system had done what it could. Marcus had been seeing a therapist himself, Dr. Patricia Chen, who specialized in trauma and betrayal. She'd helped him understand that his need to save people came from watching his mother exhaust herself saving others, from a childhood belief that love meant sacrifice. That he'd confused enabling with empathy, fixing with loving. You can't save anyone who doesn't want to save themselves, Dr. Chen had told him. And trying to do so will only drown you both. He was learning. Learning to set boundaries, to recognize red flags, to trust his instincts. Learning that walking away wasn't giving up, sometimes it was the bravest thing you could do. The engagement ring was still lost somewhere in that warehouse. He'd never gone back to look for it. Some things were better left buried. His phone buzzed. A text from his mother, dinner Sunday. I want to check on my favorite son. Marcus smiled. Your only son. Yes to dinner. Another text, this one from a number he didn't recognize. Hi Mr. Hayes, this is Sarah's mom. Just wanted to say thank you for everything you've done for my daughter. You've changed her life. These moments, these small confirmations that his work mattered, that he was building something real even when romance failed, these were what sustained him now. He picked up his worn copy of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, opened to a passage he'd marked months ago. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. He'd found his strength. In the warehouse, yes, when he'd stood between Elena and the knife. But more importantly, in the days after, when he'd chosen himself over the comfortable lie of reconciliation. When he'd said no to the temptation to take her back, to believe her promises that things would be different. The wound was still healing. Some mornings he woke up reaching for her. Some nights he dreamed about what might have been. But the dreams were getting less frequent, the mornings less painful. He was learning to be whole on his own. Learning that he didn't need someone else to complete him, that he was enough just as he was, flawed, heartbroken, but fundamentally okay. Marcus gathered his papers, turned off the classroom lights, and walked out into the spring evening. The magnolias were blooming along Monument Avenue, filling the air with their heavy sweetness. The city looked beautiful in the golden hour, full of possibility. He didn't know what his future held. Maybe he'd fall in love again, maybe not. Maybe he'd learned too much about how badly love could hurt. But he was open to the possibility, and that felt like progress. For now, he had his students, his books, his Wednesday night poker games with Derek and the other teachers, his Sunday dinners with his parents. He had himself, and he was discovering that was more than enough. The Stoics were right, the obstacle is the way. The heartbreak had become the teacher. And Marcus was finally learning the lesson. So here's what I want to know, have you ever loved someone who couldn't love you back the way you deserved? Have you ever had to walk away from something that was destroying you, even though part of you wanted to stay? Marcus made a choice that night in the warehouse, not just to protect Elena, but to protect himself. To recognize that some relationships are toxic no matter how much you love the person. To understand that you can't save someone who keeps choosing their poison over their cure. It's a hard lesson. Maybe the hardest. But I think it's one we all need to learn eventually, that you teach people how to treat you. That accepting less than you deserve doesn't make you noble, it makes you complicit in your own diminishment. That walking away, when done with intention and self-respect, isn't abandonment. It's self-preservation. What do you think? Was Marcus right to walk away? Should he have tried harder to save Elena from herself? Or was his greatest act of love recognizing when love wasn't enough? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, if you've been Marcus or Elena or even Damien in your own story, hit that like button and subscribe. Sometimes we need to hear other people's heartbreak to make sense of our own. Because at the end of the day, we're all just trying to survive our own warehouses, our own midnight confrontations, our own moments of truth when we have to decide, do I stay and keep bleeding, or do I walk away and start healing? Marcus chose healing. What will you choose?